Thomas to the stage.
Which one's forward?
That's the right hand.
All right, so my name is Thomas, and I'm going to be talking about soul in art. The writer I chose was Sonny Rollins. He's a saxophonist, and he does a lot of jazz. And he wrote an article called "Art Never Dies." My painter is Pablo Picasso. Many of you may know him. And he was a very abstract artist and also heavily contributed towards the Cubist movement. And you'll see that quite a bit in some of his paintings. And so the main argument that I'm trying to convey with Picasso is that art very much conveys the soul and character of humanity and the lastingness, and it basically never dies, which is going to be shown by very complex emotions that are portrayed mostly through his abstract art, except for the last painting, which you'll see. This first painting, The Weeping Woman, is a very odd painting. It causes a lot of confusion as when you first look at it, the complex shapes and the very weird nature of it, it looks almost humanoid, yet you can tell there's something very off about it. The contrasting colors, especially the white in the middle, causes a very odd sense of almost sadness yet confusion at the same time, which makes a sense of wandering. And yet the stars in the eyes seem like there's some hope, yet it's very all just confusing while looking at this image, which very much portrays a very complex emotion, one of almost sorrow, and one that can basically only be portrayed through art. Next one is called Guernica. This one depicts a very jumbled mess of what is meant to represent a war that happened in Spain some time ago. And very much just by looking at it at face value, you see a lot of confusion and sorrow and a lot of chaos, as this art very much has a contrasting colors. The pure black background makes you focus much more on the foreground, which has a lot of dismembered people. There's a lot of limbs just lying around, and if you look towards the left, there's completely dismembered cows, there's a person screaming. This all creates this sense of chaos and it kind of represents human sorrow, especially in war. And this kind of emotion being brought out is very much a emotion that you wouldn't typically bring out by just writing or typical photography. This is something that through abstract art, through all these jagged and distorted shapes, it very much creates a sense of confusion, and just like the previous one, the chaotic and sorrowness of it is very much portrayed through it. And the final one I have is The Old Guitarist. This one completely contrasts the other two by having a more somber attitude. This is one of his few paintings where he didn't go for a very jagged and very abstract art. This one's much more simple, with the entire painting having a almost grayed out feeling, with the only thing that is in color, which is very important to note, is the guitar, which kind of makes this old dying man, it seems like this was his last connection to his humanity and his last connection to the world. And through this guitar and through the whole setting that this art represents, it kind of gives the feeling that this person is about to lose their humanity and they're about to lose their connection to the real world. And it's very well portrayed through the different uses of color and the different attitude that it brings along. So overall, art very much brings out the soul and character within a person and is very much the best way of displaying such emotions. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Thomas. And audience, questions, comments? What are we thinking?
Rachel?
How did you choose which paintings to use? Because I know Picasso has a lot.
I mostly chose, the first two paintings were mostly chosen because The Weeping Woman is a very popular one and I knew that one off the top of my head. And then Guernica, I chose mostly because I wanted the sense of chaos and I needed another one that depicted a sense of confusion. And then the last one, I was rummaging through his artworks and found this one and thought it contrasted the other two quite well.
Do you know the context of Guernica?
I think it was World War II when Spain was being invaded.
In the Spanish Civil War,
Yeah.
specifically. So we'll actually learn a little bit about that when we read George Orwell, because George Orwell fought in the Spanish Civil War. But yeah, cubism, right? Fragmentation, we touched on that in some of your analysis. The geometric shapes you see here, fragmenting human bodies, animal bodies, civilization is shambles, right? So that's one of the key themes here. All right, awesome. Any other questions or comments?
Katie?
Okay, so I did Picasso too for mine. Did you like look into his different periods while you were like creating the slide?
I did. He very much changed throughout, because towards the beginning he had more. You'll see this one's much later in his life. I looked into it. His earlier artworks were much more, I guess, normal comparatively. So I kind of didn't want to go for that because I remembered him for his abstract art, and so I went for the later periods because that's where all of his wacky art came out.
I wanted to compliment you on your passionate voice and the tone of your delivery. You're very confident as you analyze each work. So that's something I thought was really strong about your presentation.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Thomas.